Hello everybody, this is going to be a video tutorial on how to change a keyboard in the Lenovo x240. I think they're fairly new machines, we've only just got them anyway, and basically when I was given the task to change the keyboard in one of these things this morning, I had a quick Google search and looked around and found practically nothing. I found one document on the Lenovo website which looked like a photocopy or something, and it even looked like it was for a different model, so I couldn't really follow it. Looked on YouTube, there was nothing for this model. The only other thing I found was posts with people ranting about it, saying that it's an absolute nightmare and that it took them 4 hours to do, yada yada yada. So basically I just thought, well, I'm going to have to just go ahead and work it out for myself. Got it down to quite an easy process. You just have to keep on top of things a little bit. You do have to tear down the whole thing practically, unfortunately, but that's the way it is. So I just thought I'd make this video so that instead of you guys struggling and potentially breaking your laptop or losing plenty of screws, I'll just show you how I did it and you should be able to follow it. Okay, so if you see in this machine I have a US keyboard currently, and because we're in the UK we need to change it to be a UK keyboard, which I have here. The first thing you need to do is flip it over and remove the battery, which slides out this way. It's a very thin battery. Now that you've got the battery out, you want to look at these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 screws on the back and lose them. And basically, usually when I tear down laptops, I usually have a piece of paper and I mark it out and label everything and just lay them on the paper. But with this teardown, I found it just very simple. If you just keep your screws, say on the desk, just in a row, in order of which you do things, and then basically when you work backwards, you can work backwards. And with this video, it should be quite easy to do that. Lose these 8 screws first of all. You don't need to take them out, these ones actually, they just sit in the case and stay there nicely, and you can just place the whole cover to one side. Okay, now when you're confident that all of those are undone, you need to remove the bottom cover. Now this can be quite difficult to do. Basically you want to get something into the gap and start to find a place where it's going to start to come apart. There we go, so once you get a little gap, you should be able to start unclipping it very carefully. As long as all your screws are undone, this should start coming apart fairly easily. On the first machine I did, it's worth noting that the back here got caught up a little bit. I don't know if there was some adhesive under there or anything like that, but apparently on this one it's not doing that. So then back panel with your screws still sitting in the holes, just set that to one side. And now we have the innards of the beast. Okay, the second thing to do is to remove the internal battery, because apparently these things have a second battery, and to remove the hard drive. This is quite easy to do, just 1, 2, 3 screws, and then the connector which goes onto the motherboard, and just 1 screw for the hard drive, and then unplug the SATA plug from the end. So at this point I'm going to start setting out my screws in a row. So the best things to do with these screws is put them to one side for now, but whenever they're screws that just belong to one device, what I usually do is set the device to one side after unplugging it, and then place those screws on top of it. The only thing you have to remember is that they're there, otherwise when you pick the thing up they go flying, and you know how annoying it is to lose a laptop screw. So I'm going to do the same thing with the hard drive. Take that screw out, wherever that's gone. Remove the hard drive from the plug. This is an SSD in here. And then again put the hard drive to one side with the screw on top of it. Okay, the first screw that I'm going to go for, because basically we need to lift the motherboard, is this one right here, which also has a little metal bracket. So not only does it secure the motherboard, it also holds this the hard drive plug into the motherboard. So that comes out, and this is the point where I'm going to start my row of screws at the top here. So when that screws come out, you can take this little metal bracket off, and then I'll place that just around that screw. Don't bother unplugging the SATA cable, it's fine just staying there. Okay, the next screw that I go for is this one here, which you may think is annoyingly covered by this little bit of plastic here, but actually that plastic is helping to route these antenna cables round, so it's actually quite handy. Effectively, if you just use your screwdriver to gently pull those cables out, and then now this plastic cover, it actually uses this second screw hole to secure itself. So if you just get your screwdriver under the end there, lift it out of there, and then you can push it forward. I remove this screw here that's underneath it. Set that to one side in the row and place the plastic bracket around that screw as well. Next screw is just to the right of that here, next to one of the monitor cables. Another tip is obviously always put your screw end up so that they just sit on the head and don't roll around. At this point I'm going to take off these connector strips here. This one here is a very simple flick up of the plastic thing that holds the cable in, and then just pull the ribbon out and just let that sit there. The second one is this large one here. These are actually for the keyboard, most of these ones. I think this big one is for the trackpad. So this one you can just very gently lift it off. The thing is with this one here is once you lift it off, you'll notice that it's got some adhesive on the foam underneath, which is actually adhered to the tape that's covering some of the motherboard here. Basically, if you get a small screwdriver like this, as you're dragging this ribbon back, just very gently peel off that adhesive without damaging it, and also from the motherboard underneath where it's stuck to, just help it up as you pull it. Basically it just means that it stays on there with the foam and you can reuse it when you stick it back to the motherboard. Immediately underneath this one is another ribbon, so just flick that up and use the blue ribbon to help it out, so that's fine, just leave those there. Okay, there's one more screw just over here, the bottom right hand side. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is prepare to remove this speaker down here. The only reason why we have to do that is because of the cable which runs up here and onto the motherboard. It's not just a case of unplugging it, because it's also coupled with the other speaker which is mounted on the motherboard. Quite oddly actually, because it's sort of two speakers in different places, but hey ho. So yeah, we're going to unplug this 2-pin connector here by very gently pulling it out. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and remove this speaker on the bottom right hand side. There's just 2 screws for this. Okay, and then it should just lift straight up. There's a little bit of tape. Every now and then you might encounter little pieces of tape which holds everything in place. We try to preserve it so that it can be used again afterwards. Just leave the speaker here because when we flip the motherboard over, it's going to be attached to it and it will go with everything. Okay, so at this point the motherboard should be loose. There's one clip here on the chassis which holds it in, so you may have to slide it to the right slightly to get it to come loose. When you're lifting the motherboard from this edge, because this is where we've disconnected everything, be aware that there are still cables, obviously the monitor cables, some more cables over here, and the antenna cables that are still attached on this edge. So what we're going to do is just flip the motherboard over so it can just stay there while we do the work on the keyboard. Then basically it's going to just flip back over. So yeah, this is quite a delicate process, so just be careful, do it slowly. And also whilst you're doing it, you're going to have to unchannel the antenna cables here. just as you go, because they're going to be one of the restrictive things that stops you from flipping it over. Okay, so now that I've done that, the motherboard is loose. There's another piece of tape here, which is just stopping it. I think it's the last thing. There's one more thing that I'm missing. I think it's one of these cables over here. Ah, it's not. I think it's just, there we go. Okay, so the motherboard's now loose, so we're just going to gently roll this over and let it sit there. Okay, now we're on to layer 3, which is this plastic cover here, which I think is just to separate the motherboard and the keyboard and to protect the cables underneath. We just need to remove this. It's very simple. It's just 5 screws, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, it's worth noting at this point that we've uncovered another ribbon here that we didn't disconnect. That's because this one isn't actually used for anything. I don't know what it connects to. It could be for an add-on or something like that. But you'll notice it's been taped over with the yellow tape anyway, so just ignore it and you'll see how we deal with it. Okay, so now we've removed those screws. This plastic cover sort of sits under this metal plate here and this metal plate here, so you should just be able to pull it backwards slightly and lift it out, and then just set that to one side. Okay, now we're going to start undoing screws from the keyboard. There's these two screws here on the left and 4 screws along the top. Just lost one around the back here. Get over there. Okay, so all those screws are now released. The next thing that we have to do is deal with the ribbons. This is a tricky part and a very delicate part because you don't want to damage any ribbons, and sometimes that can happen if you're a little bit too rough with them. The ribbons on the keyboard that comes with the machine are stuck down to the keyboard itself. If we look at the keyboard we're going to be putting in, you'll see what the underside looks different for some reason, but the cables look the same. So you've got this main ribbon here, which comes down here, the little ribbon at the side that comes around the white one here, which is the equivalent of this one, and you'll notice that this ribbon here, the unused one, and another one that comes off of the trackpad isn't on this assembly when it comes, so you need to preserve this to be stuck back to this keyboard. Okay, so what I'm going to start by doing is just taking the unused ribbon over here and just very, very gently start peeling it back from the keyboard, and it should just come along quite easily. It doesn't take too much force. You'll notice that most of the adhesive is sort of coming off onto the keyboard, but I wouldn't worry about it too much because it's going to be compacted anyway, and there's just enough adhesive on the back to keep it secure. Okay, so that one's there. One thing I think that I did last time which helped me out was just to stick this down here temporarily just to keep it out of the way. Now the next thing to do is to remove this ribbon which comes from the trackpad. It's a weird little socket. To be honest with you, I haven't figured out how to correctly release it, but I was easily able to just pull it out with a little bit of force and then get it back in just by using a flathead screwdriver very gently on one edge. So basically, if I peel back this to start with, just to give me a bit more give, and then basically just very gently force it out. If you just give it a little wiggle, it will come out without too much trouble, and it won't do any harm. So if we just carry on peeling this back here, and then it goes under this main this main ribbon here it comes stuck to the motherboard already. If you just peel that back temporarily, and also it's stuck quite quite strongly to the motherboard down here and across this ribbon. Now when I did this on the first try, it did actually sort of damage the fabric which protects the ribbon a little bit, but I don't suppose it matters too much. But if you do it very, very slowly, it might not happen at all. So you can see that fabric ribbon starting to come with it there. There's not too much I can do about it really. Just trying to separate the ribbon from the black, the silver ribbon from the black ribbon, so that it's not too mashed up. Yeah, so the same thing has happened as last time. It's just started to fray it along this edge as you take it off, but it doesn't really matter too much. Just in case you're wondering, this silver protective ribbon doesn't carry any signals, it's just to protect this other ribbon that runs alongside it. Okay, so I've separated that. I'm just going to continue to peel this back under here, and then it's all released. Oh, it's just one last part, which is just to peel off that first ribbon from the white ribbon there. Now you have two sets. You have the ribbons that are attached to the trackpad, which we don't need to worry about, and the ribbons that come with the keyboard assembly. So this can be stuck back down here now, and we're ready to remove the keyboard. Some people might see the LCD brackets here covering the keyboard and get scared that you have to remove those as well, which is an absolute nightmare. Fortunately, this isn't true. I discovered that once you remove these 6 screws from the keyboard actually lifts up and slides out from underneath. But before we do that, one thing that I highly recommend you do is just get a little bit of foam. This came with the laptop, it held the battery originally. Failing that, the bubble wrap, which I can show you, the bubble wrap that came with the new screen is very suitable for this. What you want to do is open up the laptop from the front. Be careful when you do this, because the hinges are designed to act when there is a lot of weight on the laptop base, but now there's not because you've removed half of it. So just be careful, and then basically just place the bubble wrap in between the screen and the keyboard. This is because when you remove the keyboard, it's going to completely expose the LCD panel, so if you're not expecting it, you could end up with a scratch. So now that you've got your screen protected, we can go ahead and lift the keyboard itself, which should come up quite easily. Actually, there's just another piece of tape here. So you can lift the keyboard up and then just start to gently slide it backwards from underneath the LCD brackets. Be careful of the ribbons while you do this. And there we have it, there's our keyboard. And as promised, an exposed LCD panel. So from this point onwards, we're practically just working backwards. So if we get our replacement keyboard, protect the cables as you're doing this, but if you just slide one in, one end in and the other end, and then just basically start pushing it underneath the brackets. A little bit of tape there makes it a little bit difficult. And there we go, until it's right to the very back and lines up with the screw holes. Okay, just ensure that all the screw holes line up and that you can press it down into its position. And as long as there's nothing caught underneath, like sometimes this little, I think it's a battery, the cable gets caught underneath, and sometimes some of the ribbons that we've removed can get caught as well, so just be careful of that. In my opinion, the best thing to do as soon as you've put in the new keyboard is to secure it with the 8 screws that we removed earlier. Okay, so once you've put in the 8 screws again, we can take this little piece of holding tape off of here. Now if you remember on the last one, this part was adhesive, so because it's brand new, it's come with a protective thing over the glue so that you can take it off when you're ready to start sticking it down. Okay, so now we just need to sort out this big mess of ribbons here and get it back in order. If you just use your memory a little bit to remember where they were. This part here was actually turned around like this, so that this ribbon could be under here. And I believe it was stuck to the white ribbon here, so you can stick that back down there. And then obviously this comes in underneath that one, so that should be there with that one. And then if you look down here, there's another protective adhesive strip. If you peel this off to expose the glue, and this is basically going to secure this cable as it was before. So if you get this into its correct position, so it's ready, and then from there on you can just stick this directly down there. Once you've done that, you can also press this down to stick that to the motherboard where it was originally. Oh, I'm getting stuck to everything here. And then remove this protective strip here and stick this back down where it was before. Okay, so now I need to plug this one back in, and if you stick it back down where it was here, there was a little bend here, as you can see. They do these things quite neatly. From there, and then we need to get this back in. So if you're confused as to which way up it went, the black side of the ribbon goes down and the gold side up. Okay, so if you just start by lining it up and poking it into the end there, and then what I used is a flat end screwdriver like this. If you get the right angle, you can just get the flat end behind the rigid part of the cable and just gently push it back in like that. You have to be extremely careful when you do that. I was just using the flat end of the screwdriver up against the main connector part of the ribbon. The end of the ribbon is very rigid, which I assume is to help you push it back in. But just use your intuitiveness and just be very careful. Once you've done that, make sure the cable is nicely stuck down, if there's any glue left at all, but it should be fine anyway. And then we had our unused cable, which you can practically just stick anywhere because it doesn't matter. I'll just stick it where I think it was before. Actually, I think at this point there was a bend. Like this, and it's sat there doing not much at all. Okay, so at this point you should just have 1 strip, 2 strip, 3 strip, useless 4 strip. Now the next stage is to replace the plastic cover. So basically you can just slide it under this metal bracket here and under the other bracket there, and then just press down, make sure your battery connector doesn't get caught. Press it down and then basically replace the 5 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so at this stage we're ready to bring the motherboard back over. So just basically reverse what you did before and flip it back over, but as you do so you're going to have to reroute the grey and orange antenna cables as you go. Lovely jubbly. And also, when you put the motherboard back over, don't forget to slot it underneath the chassis bracket there. And then once you've done that, everything should just sit nicely where it was before. One thing I've noticed is that one of the monitor cables here does come loose from the channel next to the fan. Whether it was in there before or not, it's a good idea to just put it back in. Like so. Okay, so we're going to carry on working in reverse and replace the speaker down here. Okay, so once the speaker's back in, we just want to plug the battery back into the 2-pin socket here. And next we want to reinsert these strips here. So we're going to do this one first. Just make sure the socket cover is flipped up. And then this is quite tricky because you don't get much give, but you should just be able to lay the ribbon in there like that, and then just snap the cover back, which grips it in place. And then do the same with this one here, probably even more tricky. Okay, and finally the one which we preserved the foam on, and that just goes into this snap socket here on top. Okay, so first we want to put in this screw in the bottom right, and then the screw in this middle top hole here. Okay, so next is the screw here. It goes in the top hole, not the one below it. And then we take the plastic bracket which covers it over. If you find the little nipple, if you will, on the back there, and that whilst you're sliding it onto the motherboard from the back, that goes into the second hole just below the screw. It should just lay in there quite nicely. And then once you've done that, you need to route the orange and grey cables back through the bracket. Like so. The last screw on the motherboard is the one down the bottom here, and if you remember, we need to put the little metal bracket back on which holds the hard drive cable in. So that just goes over there. The left hand side of it clips under the motherboard, and then you just screw that back in. Okay, only 3 things left to do. Still working in reverse. Plug the hard drive back in, and then reinsert it, and secure it in place with the screw. And then the second internal battery, remember you've got the 3 screws on top of it from earlier. It goes back in like this. Just be careful of the red and black cables, they can get tangled up sometimes. And then route the cable neatly back through here, and then plug it back into the motherboard. There. Secure it with the screws. Okay, so lastly, we'll get our bottom cover, and when you start going about putting this back on, you have to remember and look at the clips at the back. There are like 4 or 5 clips at the back here, so what you want to do is sort of start putting it on at an angle and then just press down at the back here to make sure that all the clips take hold. And basically if you just let the lid drop, you should look along the back edge and everything should be nice and flush. And now you can basically start pressing around the sides to make sure it's all clipped down and set down nice and neatly. At this point you can feel free to remove the bubble wrap in between. So keep pressing down just to make sure everything's in place, and then before you do any screws up, just have a look around the edge just to make sure that everything is flush and that nothing's stopping it from sitting properly. One thing to note is that it's normal for the dock interface to be set down slightly. When I did it on the first one, I thought the cover wasn't on properly because it was set down, but that's just the way it's designed. So now you can go ahead and do up the 8 screws. Okay, and then you can replace the battery. Turn it over, open it up, make sure your keyboard's looking properly, not sticking out anywhere, which hopefully it won't be. And if your laptop's charged, you should be able to turn it straight on. Mine isn't because it's a brand new unit, so I'm just going to plug it in and see if everything works. Okay, so we're all plugged in now and it's firing up, which is a good sign. Okay, so these come preloaded with Windows 8. I'm just going to go through this out of box part so we can test. Obviously the trackpad is working properly. I don't accept, but we'll click yes anyway. I want pink. Okay, so here's the first point. You can test the laptop keyboard and everything seems to be working fine. Test everything including the little mouse ball in the middle, caps lock, all done. Okay, so we're all done. I hope this video's been helpful and that it makes doing this task a little less stressful for anyone that needs to take it on. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. I will answer them, and that's it. Bye.